So I just watched the first 3 episodes of Andor, and we need to talk about this show. There are 5 things that blew me away, and there was one thing that shocked me. So let's start with the first thing that I really loved about this show, the way it looks. I mean, I loved what they did so far, especially with that virtual set technology, but this is in a totally different league. This is all filmed on practical sets. It's filmed in various parts of the world, and it shows. This looks like a movie. In fact, we just heard that Rogue Squadron, the movie that was being developed by Patty Jenkins, has been shelved, and so maybe there won't be a movie next year. But we have this, and this is a movie in terms of quality. Those first scenes in the first episode, I mean, that felt like something out of Blade Runner. It's gritty, it's raining. You feel that all these actors are in real environments. It's all filmed outside. It's filmed at the right moment of the day. There are scenes in the morning where you have that beautiful morning light. There is stuff happening at night where you can tell that it's not fake. The dust in the air. I love the fact that they used a ton of extra. So the scenes that we see outside really feel crowded. There's a lot of stuff going on. The tapestry, the background, the environment, the context of the story feels so real. I mean, I've watched 3 episodes. It feels like I've seen an entire movie, but more importantly, I feel like I've been there. I've been in that universe for almost 3 hours, and I can't wait to go back. In fact, that was the first thing that I wanted to do after seeing these 3 episodes is like, I gotta watch this again. I so love the immersion of this. And there's nothing that breaks that illusion. You sometimes have that with Obi-Wan Kenobi, where you could tell that they were in this virtual environment. And it was done with limited means. And yes, that allows Disney to do a lot with relatively little money, but it kind of breaks the illusion. Not here. If this had been a movie, I would have gone and I would have watched it several times. And this is just the beginning. This is just the first 3 episodes. We're going to get 2 seasons of 12 episodes each. Mind-blowingly well executed. I love that they did not use the stagecraft technology. Second thing that blew me away, the story. This is a very complex story. And I love the way it's edited and the way the story is told. It kind of pulls back the curtain gradually. When you first start the story, you have no idea what's going on. Of course, we recognize Cassian Andor, but what's he doing? And who are these people? And then you get flashbacks and you're like, okay, so what's going on there? I love the alternation between the present and the past. I also really think that the dialogue is beyond anything we've seen so far. A lot of the dialogue in the current television series feels very Star Wars because it's not very good dialogue. And let's be honest, I mean, I love George Lucas. If there's one thing that he was not very good at, it's writing good dialogue. And a lot of the Star Wars series that we've seen so far have appropriate dialogue. This dialogue feels so natural. There's good pacing. Nothing feels stilted or theatrical. There's nothing over the top in the delivery. Every episode kept me wanting to see the next one. And after having seen the next one, I wanted to go back and rewatch the previous one. That is quality storytelling. Number 3, the characters. Oh my goodness. Of course, Star Wars is special effects, it's the music, it's the lightsabers, it's all that. But the really good Star Wars is always about compelling characters that you can identify with. There are a ton of characters in Andor. And a lot of them are brand new to us. We've never seen them before. Of course, we know Cassian from Rogue One. We know Mon Mothma. But there are so many secondary characters in this story that we've never met, and yet they all click immediately. Let me give you some examples. Of course, one of the highlights, Cassian Andor himself. I think Diego Luna does a tremendous job. His performance is so good. And I don't know how he pulls it off, because he's actually playing a less developed character than the one that we saw in Rogue One. Here he's much more rough, unpolished. He's still learning. And I don't know how to do this because this is filmed so much later than Rogue One, but he looks younger. He acts younger. It's amazing. He's very charismatic, and I can totally see that they wanted to make him the lead of this story. Then you have his nemesis. That, to me, was a total surprise. It is a character called Cyril Karn, and he's played by an actor called Kyle Soller. And that is already one of my favorite villains in the Star Wars galaxy, because there's something extremely ambitious in him. You see that same tenacity that you sometimes see with the Empire. This is kind of low-level authority, but it's someone who takes himself extremely seriously. And because of that work ethic that he has, he becomes very menacing. Because this is a guy who really wants to do his job and wants to do it really well, whereas a lot of other people in the universe that we are plunged in are a bit jaded. Don't stir the pot too much. And this guy is, no, I want to go after this situation. I don't think we've ever seen an Imperial type character that is played with so much nuance. He's ambitious, but he's not very good at what he does, at least not right now. So you feel that this character is probably going to evolve. He's going to learn from his mistakes, and he is going to grow into this formidable foe. And to sense that in the first 3 episodes, and to feel the potential of this character, and yet to see the restraint that they have in telling these first few steps of his career, unbelievably well done. It's kind of hard for all the other villains in the story, I think, to get to that level because, wow, I've never seen something like that in Star Wars. And then a special mention of the character played by Fiona Shaw. She plays Cassian's mother, Marva Andor. Yes, she is the one who gives the name to the series, not just Cassian. And she is very important to the story because Star Wars is often about daddy problems, right? It's always the tension between the kid and the father. And here we get a story about a mother-son relationship, or at least part of the story is this mother-son relationship. And that's, I think, very well executed. She does such a great job playing both the current day Marva and also Marva in her earlier years. And so for one actress to pull off those 2 performances, it's really well done. Number 4, I never thought that I would have a new favorite droid in the Star Wars galaxy. I mean, I love R2-D2, NC-3PO. I love BB-8. I love all the little tiny droids that they introduced later in the sequels and even in the video games. But man, B2EMO, or B2EMO, voiced by Dave Chapman, is an amazing droid. And I can totally see the Lego sets that are based on this and the toys that are going to sell. But it's not made as a toy because it's kind of not a very good looking droid. It actually looks more like a cross between Wall-E and a stackable red lunchbox. I've never seen a design like that, but it works so well. It's such a funny, charming droid and so different from any other droid that we've seen so far. He reminded me a little bit the way he moved and the way he was able to kind of lower his head and kind of hide and make himself very small. He reminded me a little bit of the droids in the Black Hole movie, if you've ever seen that. If not, go to Disney Plus and watch that movie. It's an insanely good movie, even though it shows its age. But wow, that was at a time that Disney was doing science fiction in a way that we hadn't seen before. And then the 5th thing that blew me away, and maybe the most important one, is the message. And how pertinent this message is in our times. Of course, Star Wars is, in a certain way, escapism. It's to be in this galaxy far, far away and kind of dream about a world with lightsabers and Jedi and the good always winning from the bad guys in the end. But a good story and a good fairy tale, because that's ultimately what Star Wars is, also has a message for our times. It is a story ultimately about how oppression and exploitation affects the regular people, not just the politicians like Mon Mothma or the Jedi Council or whatever. We see like tragic stories of how much people have already suffered under this growing power of the Empire and the exploitation of the natural resources on all these planets, and how much that affects everyone, older people, children, the whole ecosystem, how it destroys planets, how it destroys the individual freedom of people and their society. And there is a very tragic note to these first 3 episodes. And it's a lot about loss, and it's real tragedy. It's not embellished or simplified because this has to appeal to all ages. No, this is a message for adults. It's a message, I would say, even for our leaders in our societies, because it's in the midst of all that misery and that oppression that heroes rise. And it's because they're fed up with that oppression. They're fed up with the status quo. The natural tendency of people is, when they are under duress, is to lay low, right? Let's just do our thing. But then nothing changes. And so this story is about this classic call to adventure or a vocation. And then who is going to answer that call? Some people are going to do the wrong thing. They're going to shy away. But certain people will rise to the occasion and will even go beyond what you would think they could do because of, their kind of moral gray behavior. But this is such an important and hopeful story to tell in our times. Wherever we look, there's so many situations close by, but also in other countries on a global scale, where we see what the Empire does in the fictional world of Star Wars. We see it in our real world happening along the same lines. Evil always has the same playbook and works along the same lines and is motivated by the same things that we see in Star Wars. It's always about greed, about power, about vanity, about jealousy. And you see all those vices wreaking havoc, but you also see people that rise above themselves to counter that and that are growing and improving. So it doesn't mean that you already have to be a hero at the beginning. This is why this story is about Cassian Andor, who does not start off as a hero, or like a golden child with a secret provenance and lots of favorable midichlorians. No, he is a questionable guy who does questionable things. But that is what gives this story so much hope and so much lift, because we already know how his journey is going to end. He is going to play a pivotal role in safeguarding the galaxy. But how does he get to that level of heroism, sacrificing his own life? That, by the way, was a spoiler for Rogue One. If you haven't seen that movie, why are you watching this? Anyway. But it's hopeful also for us, because we too have a tendency, when we're confronted with all the misery in the world and all that oppression and these, global forces, you ask yourself, well, what can I do, How is that my problem? And we just carry on doing our own little things and let's lay low. But our world also needs heroes. We are also called to rise to the occasion, to become better than we are currently, and to do what we can do to resist evil, to resist greed. Maybe first of all, by resisting it in our own tendencies, in our own pursuit of stuff and power and wealth, That is why this story is so pertinent and so important to tell. There was one thing that I did not expect, and that really shocked me. And here it is. It is how much this particular Star Wars story does the total opposite of almost every other Star Wars story so far, and almost every other big franchise right now. In a sense that there is no fan service. There is no use of the familiar, which is so obvious, something that you want to do with a franchise like Star Wars. You want to please the fans. Here, you want to see R2-D2 and C-3PO? You want to see a cameo of Harrison Ford showing up all of a sudden? We'll de-age him. They've done that. And let's be honest, we all love it, but not here. Because it would detract and it would make the story feel artificial and more like a fairy tale. So there's none of that. There's no pandering to the fans. There are no Jedi, no lightsabers. There are no one-dimensional bad guys. That's also very, very cool about this story. Like, none of the bad guys act in the way that we've seen the Empire act before. In a sense, it's much more nuanced. From the logic, the internal logic of the so-called bad guys, you see that even the villain actually has a more moral character than most of the people that he obeys to. That is very subtle writing. That is not something that I expected. So no cameos. It is a story that dares to stand on its own. It doesn't need lightsabers or Jedi or cameos as a crutch. It's the story that should prove that this is a series worth filming, that this is a story worth telling. And I think that despite the fact that it has so few ingredients that make Star Wars, at least so far, it still feels 110% Star Wars. This is what Star Wars can be. It sets the bar. It sets it very, very high. And it's also a very expensive bar. You can tell that. But this is what Star Wars deserves. This is what this franchise needs to go to the next level. You don't want Star Wars to be this continuous regurgitation of storylines that we've seen before and tropes and cameos. No, this is a series that dares to do something different, and it does it so well. If this is present-day Star Wars, then it makes me so eager to see what the future Star Wars will bring us. Because this is the bar, and now I want all the rest to rise to the occasion and to rise to that level and even go beyond it. Let me know in the comments what you thought about these first 3 episodes, what your hopes are for Star Wars, what you liked, maybe also what you didn't like. Keep it constructive. And if you like what you saw, make sure to subscribe. And if you are one of my patrons, I will do episode analysis in my podcast, Story Secrets, that I create for my patrons every week. So if you want to hear more in-depth, spoiler-filled reflections on Andor, then maybe take a look at patreon.com/Father Roderick. Thanks for watching. May the Force be with you. Talk to you soon.